Let's go over the steps for simplifying complex expressions. Alright, so the first step would be to find the LCD between the fractions in the numerator and the denominator. So I have here a couple fractions I want to take a look at. I want to look at that numerator first, and I have one fraction in the numerator. The denominator from that is just x. So x would be part of the LCD. The next fractions I want to look at are any of the fractions from the denominator here. In that case, the only denominator I have is x minus 1. So x minus 1 would also be included into the LCD. So step 2 is to multiply every term in the complex fraction by the least common denominator. So I'm going to go through and multiply. We have one term here, this is a whole term, and this is a whole term. Remember, the terms are separated by addition or subtraction. We're going to multiply every one of those terms by the x times x minus 1. So I'm going to go this term times x minus 1, the 5 times x minus 1, and the x over x minus 1 by x times x minus 1. So remember that when we're multiplying something, we are multiplying it into the numerator, or it can cancel out with the denominator. Step 3, simple enough, is to reduce and simplify. However, you just need to be careful that you reduce each individual term. So first, let's reduce this 3 over x times x minus 1. The x's will cancel out, and in the numerator we are left with 3 times x minus 1. That is all for our main numerator. Then let's look at this term right here. The x minus 1's cancel out, so I really just have x times x. And then nothing cancels out with that 5 because that's really like 5 over 1. So it will be plus 5x times x minus 1. Okay, at that point we have gotten rid of our complex fractions because multiplying through by the LCD eliminates all the complex parts. Now what we just need to do is the simplification part. So I'm going to multiply through or do any distributing I need to do. So I end up with x squared, and then I'm going to go 5x times x is 5x squared, and 5x times negative 1 is minus 5x. And then if you're to combine any like terms, the 3x minus 3 stays the same because that can't cancel out with each other. And then on the bottom, the x squared plus 5x squared combines together, and then we have minus 5x. So the total simplification of the complex expression is 3x minus 3, all divided by 6x squared minus 5x. Let's take a look at one more example. So I have this fraction, x over x minus 1 plus 2 over x plus 2, all over 3 over x plus 2 minus 2x over x minus 1. So the first thing we need to do is decide what is our LCD. So we're going to take a look at each of the denominators. Here I have x minus 1, x plus 2, x plus 2, x minus 1. So the LCD then would be, we have an x minus 1 and an x plus 2. We do not need to include x minus 1 squared because they're factors of each other, so they're even multiples. If one of the factors was an x minus 1 squared, then we would have to include the x minus 1. Alright, so then what we're going to do is once we figure out our least common denominator is that x minus 1 times x plus 2, we will go through and multiply every term by that least common denominator. That first term, here's our second term, our bottom term, and the bottom right term here. So once we've got those, then we can start our reducing and simplifying. Every denominator that's in the complex parts will go away, and you should be left with one larger denominator. So here, the x minus 1 here will cancel out with that x minus 1. This x plus 2 will cancel out with the x plus 2. Same here. And this x minus 1 and this x minus 1. So what we are left with then is x times x plus 2 plus 2 times x minus 1, because everything else canceled out, all over 3 times x minus 1 minus 2x times x plus 2. Okay, from there we need to start doing the distribution. So we will have x squared plus 2x plus 2x minus 2 over 3x minus 3 minus 2x squared minus 4x. And if we go through and lastly just simplify or combine any like terms, on the top those two x's combine. On the bottom we have some x's that combine. Let's write that as negative 2x squared minus x minus 3. And there is our simplification of the complex fraction. If you follow the steps, these won't be that difficult. The hardest part is the actual simplifying.